Welcome on this Sunday morning, May 26th, Memorial Day weekend, sunny day, everything's going fine. I'm your service leader today. I'm Connie Erickson, and we welcome you to this congregation, a place where you can be yourself, whomever you are, however you describe yourself, or name the holy. We especially welcome those of you who are visiting for the first time. Please stay after the service for coffee or tea so we can get to know you better. A reminder to all of us, please mute or whatever your ringer on your cell phone. Our announcements are in your order of service. Members, please stay after the service for our congregational meeting. Much appreciation goes out to our media technician, Jake Tranter, our music director, Sean Shea, and our church administrator, Genevieve Gonzalez. And a big thank you to our greeters today. Now's the time for our fish pantry collection of food and money for those in need who are hungry and without shelter. My So, would it be before this? This technology thing isn't my greatest skill. Anyway, we have a little change. But first of all, I want to thank you for your gifts to Fish Pantry. And now we're going to have an opening song called Get Together.
Hope you will all sing along. This is a get-together song.
Louder, Sean.
Louder? Okay. How's that? Can you hear me? Love is but a song we sing, and fear's the way we die. You can make the mountains ring, or make the angels cry. Though the bird is on the wing, and you may not know why. Come on, people, now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Let Let us love one another right now. Some will come and some will go. We shall surely pass. When the one that left us here returns for us at last. We are but a moment's sunlight fading in the grass. Come on, people, now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Let us love one another right now. If you hear the song I sing, you will understand. You hold the key to love and fear in your trembling hand. Just one key unlocks them both. It's there in your command. Come on, people, now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Let us love one another right now. Let us love one another right now. Let us love one another right now. Right now. Right now. Thank you.
Perfect. Now it's time to light our chalice. And the words today are by Betts Winnicky. May this flame, symbol of transformation since time began, fire our curiosity, strengthen our wills, and sustain our courage as we seek what is good within us and around us. Our opening words are from Deepak Chopra. There are no extra pieces in the universe. Everyone is here because he or she has a place to fill. And every piece must fit itself into the big jigsaw puzzle. Okay, and now we have a story for all ages. Since Dennis is so good at bringing stories, being an ex-school teacher, I thought, well, I could bring one too. So the name of this book is What Do You Do with a Chance? One day I got a chance. It just seemed to show up. It acted like it knew me, as if it wanted something. I didn't know why it was here. What do you do with a chance? I wondered. And here's the little guy. It fluttered around me. It brushed up against me. It circled me as if it wanted me to grab it. I started to reach for it, but I was unsure and pulled back. And so it flew away. I thought about it a lot. I wished I'd taken my chance. I realized I wanted it, but I still didn't know if I had the courage. When another chance came around, I wasn't so sure, but I decided to try. I went to reach for it, but I missed and fell. I was embarrassed. I felt foolish. It seemed like everyone was looking at me. I decided I never wanted to feel this way again. So here he is, the little guy. And everyone else in the picture is laughing. So after that, whenever a chance came along, I ignored it. And the more I ignored them, the less they came around. Until one day I noticed I hadn't seen a chance in quite a while. It was as if they had all disappeared. I started to worry. What if I don't get another chance? I knew I acted like I didn't care, but the truth was I did. I still wanted to take a chance, but I was afraid, and I wasn't sure I would be brave enough. Then I thought, maybe I don't have to be brave all the time. Maybe I just need to be brave for a little while and at the right time. I realized it was up to me. I promised myself that if I ever got another chance, I wasn't going to hold back. If I got another chance, I was going to be ready. Then one seemingly ordinary day, I saw something shining far off in the distance. Is it possible, I hoped? Could this be my chance? I had to find out. I ran as hard and as fast as I could toward it. I don't know how to explain it, but the second I let go of my fears, I was full of excitement. I just have to show you this illustration of this little guy. Whoop. It wasn't that I was no longer afraid, but my excitement was bigger than my fear. As I got closer, I could see this was really a huge chance. But this time I was ready. As it came by, I reached out and grabbed it, and I held on with all of my might. And there's... It felt so good to soar, to fly, to be free. I now see that when I hold back, I miss out. And I don't want to miss out. There's just so much I want to do and see and discover. So what do you do with a chance? You take it, because it might be the start of something incredible. Okay, we have an anthem performed by Sean.
This is a rewrite of an old hymn that was one of those laments that, why is the world so unfair kind of thing. And the question why is great, and kids like to ask that question, but they don't always, there's not always complaining about why I didn't get as big a piece of chocolate cake. Sometimes it's why are there rainbows? stuff like that. Farther along, we'll know more about it. Farther along, we'll understand why. Cheer up, my people, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. Seeking the truth, I'm on a great journey, walking a path no other can know. Sometimes it seems I'm making great progress, while other times it's painfully slow. Can you relate? Farther along, we'll know more about it. Farther along, we'll understand why. Cheer up, my people, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. While on this path I met other travelers, sharing good stories of our strange lives. Many a time in someone's narration, I see my reflection in a new light. Farther along, we'll know more about. Farther along, we'll understand why. Cheer up, my people, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. Seeking and searching, probing the problems, wondering and wondering, questing for keys. My exploration of the great secrets keeps me in awe of life's mysteries. Farther along, we'll know more about it. Farther along, we'll understand why. Cheer up, my people, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. We'll understand it all by and by. Thank you.
Well, I can understand searching for keys. Now it's time to invite our children to join us, to invite our children to go downstairs. And if you will, join us in singing Go Now in Peace. We now take the time to share our joys and concerns with candle lighting, spoken or silent words. If you are willing to share today and want to share with us, please make a line to the right. Or not. Well, then I think we're all, oh. Now it's time for our offertory, and we are supported by your generosity. It is what fuels this community and its mission. Thank you. May we be committed to using these gifts to make a difference in the world and to expand our beloved community.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
I realize I forgot to say something to the people who are watching, who have zoomed in or gone to YouTube to join us today. Thank you for joining us, and you're welcome to be a part of our service. So now's the time we're going to take a moment to quiet our minds and to center ourselves to receive the words that we're going to hear today. And so just get comfortable and bring your shoulders up and back and down. 2 more times. Bring them up and back and down. And now I want you, if you're willing, to close your eyes and make circles with your nose. Yeah, as if your nose was a piece of chalk and you're making little circles. And then little circles the other way. And then let's relax the muscles in our face, around your mouth and your jaw, around your eyes. And just begin noticing your breath. So we're going to take 3 breaths now. On the inhale, we're going to say to ourselves, I am. And on the exhale, here. So inhaling through your nose, exhaling from your mouth. And then just come back to your breath and notice. And now we're going to take 3 breaths again. This time on the inhale, we're going to say, I am. And on the exhale, grateful. Inhaling through your nose, exhaling from your mouth. And bringing your attention back to your breath. Feeling your breath in your body, in your tummy, your rib cage, entering your nostrils. Feel your breath. And then for the last time, for our 3 breaths, we're going to inhale, saying to ourselves, I am. And on our exhale, enough. Inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your mouth. And just notice your breath. Good, and now let's open our eyes and feel into your body and your breath. This Sunday, the writers group has each of us have chosen something we've written. And all the years we've been together, we just went through our own things and chose something we wanted to share with you today. And I'm going to begin since I'm up here. So we each have a different topic. And so get comfortable. And here we go. The essay or writing that I chose is called The Quote That Found Me. When our writers group chose the topic quotes, I was eager to write about quotes since I'm a collector of quotes. I use quotes at the end of my yoga class. The quotes that I usually use are quotes that are not sweet and flowery, but instead more like a nudge or sometimes a kick in the pants. In our yoga class, we give our bodies the challenge of stretching our bodies, and the quotes act as a stimulant to stretching our minds. Here is an example of one of those quotes, and by Rumi. Your task is not to seek love, but to find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. So those are the kind of little nudges I give my yoga class. Last year, on our return flight from Boston, I was reading a great little book titled My Name is Lucy Barton by Elizabeth Strout. I knew within a few pages that I was really going to enjoy this book. The book read like a memoir. I felt I knew the characters. About halfway through the book, I read these 3 sentences. It interests me how we find ways to feel superior to another person or another group of people. It happens everywhere and all the time. Whatever we call it, I think it is the lowest part of who we are. This need to find someone else to put down. So those were the 3 sentences. Well, these words were a blast to my inner self. I've read quite a bit about other societies singling out particular groups as a scapegoat, but I felt these 3 sentences were addressing me. The idea that when my mind drifts off to some judgmental thought, I'm sinking to the lowest part of me? I found that quote profound. Since reading these lines, I have often asked myself, why do I let myself attach to those thoughts? What does my ego gain from having those thoughts? I decided to start paying attention to those thoughts and to find out what triggers them. Well, what I did discover was those thoughts distance me from another person. When I'm in a reflective mood, I often turn to the words of John O'Donohue in his book, To Bless the Space Between Us. He writes, "When you begin to sense your imagination is the place where you are most divine, you feel called to clean out your mind, all of that worn and shabby furniture of thought that no longer serves you. You develop from your own self-compassion a greater compassion to others." I found comfort in a sermon by Dennis Reynolds. He reminded us, you can always begin again. So I keep this quote by John O'Donohue close to my heart. May I live this day compassionate of heart, clear of words, gracious in awareness, courageous in thought, and generous in love. So our next speaker is Betsy Walters.
I gave a lot of thought to what I wanted to write about. This is one we did a long time ago, I think. It's called Lost Cause or Lost Causes. Thank you. No, I got to read it. Sources for this story are memories from my father's ramblings, research by my son, as well as my memory of my father's last days. Denzil Wood graduated high school in 1917. After attending Humboldt Teachers College, he applied for a teaching job in Hawaii. The acceptance came back, addressed to Miss Denzil Wood. Oh, so he decided he did not want to be a teacher. After moving to Los Angeles, he decided to join the Marines. He was rejected at first because he did not weigh enough, but finally got in. After bulking up on bananas, he discovered everyone was doing their best to get out. The 41st Company began their tour of duty by being sent briefly to Honolulu, then to Nagasaki, Japan, before being sent to Vladivostok, Russia, where the intention was to help to prevent the revolution. Since the mission was secret, they were issued summer uniforms instead of winter uniforms. After deaths in the unit due to cold, and the Red Cross finally found some woolen underwear for the men. They arrived too late to prevent anything because the Menshevik Revolution, followed by the Bolshevik Revolution, had already happened. In a letter to his sister, which was written in Guam, Dad described Vladivostok as picturesque. There were people from all over the world there, including 12,000 American doughboys who were sick of the place. He said that he went on to say that the Russian Bolsheviki are always causing trouble and are crazy. He also described German prisoners as very small and not at all ferocious looking. Perhaps this was because American propaganda had built up the ferocious Hun as people who must be defeated regardless of the cost. We were at war. He was intrigued by the Russian architecture and customs, by the way people dressed in big overcoats and fur hats. He found the Russian girls beautiful, with wonderful physiques, and with eyes varying from dark blue to violet. Later, he described the French soldiers who had been on board with them. They seemed to have no respect for their officers. He later realized that these men had been in the trenches together and that rank meant nothing, much less than the solidarity they needed as a fighting unit. The Pacific tour included Vladivostok, Guam, and the Philippines. No matter where Dad traveled, he always shared his love of history and philosophy, along with his acerbic humor, his acerbic wit. He enjoyed sharing bits of these conversations with his family over time when it seemed appropriate. I always loved hearing his stories. Many I was too young to fully understand. Nevertheless, he was here. He was my hero. I treasure so many memories. After he was out of the Corps, he discovered that he was not eligible for any of the promised benefits. While this angered him, he swore he would never go to a veterans hospital anyway. And he did want a military funeral. Many years later, he discovered why he was deemed ineligible for benefits. No one in the group he went overseas with had actually been sworn in. The reason given was fear of the pandemic flu, which was killing millions of people worldwide. Dad finally was given a military funeral of sorts and is buried in Long Island. Let's see now if I can get out of here. You take that stuff, Connie. Thank you. I'm falling down.
I'll get it back. Our next speaker is Edith Carter.
The name of my essay is Lost and Found, and I wrote this quite some time ago. Each time we meet on Zoom, we all agree on a certain subject. And as I looked through all the papers, I picked this one. During my lifetime, I have lost and reconnected with several people. But the most dramatic was the loss of my best friend, Mary Ellen, from Westchester, Pennsylvania. In the mid-60s, I divorced my Hungarian-born husband just after a few years of marriage. Suffice it to say that my ex-husband had a relationship with another woman at work for over a year before I even became aware of it. My son was about 3 years old at the time, and it was a difficult time for both of us. We moved into a brand new, large apartment complex in Westchester, and my son attended a private nursery school where he made fast friends with another little boy whose parents lived in the same apartment complex. His parents and I became very close friends. His mom, Mary Ellen, and I were like sisters. My ex-husband would not pay child support and tried to make my life as miserable as he could. On occasion, I had to involve the police, which was traumatic for my son. I worked for a company based in Los Angeles, and in 1969, my boss was transferred back to Los Angeles. He offered me a job with better pay and an opportunity to get away from the constant stress and drama in my life. I went to court and I was granted permission to take my son with me. Every summer, my ex-husband would be able to have our son with him for several weeks. Mary Ellen and I stayed in touch. Her son flew to Her son flew to Los Angeles when he was about 6 years old, all by himself that first summer. We introduced him to Mexican food, Disneyland, and Manhattan Beach. I lost my place, excuse me. In the 70s, when I remarried, Mary Ellen came to my wedding. Eventually, we both divorced these husbands. I moved to Northern California, and we completely lost touch with each other. I suddenly had a different name, a different address, a different phone number. And after having attended college, a different profession. Although I missed Mary Ellen terribly and thought of her often, between a second child, college, a demanding job, and family responsibilities, there was no time to seriously search for her. It wasn't until the 1990s, when we had moved to Oregon, and I was teaching at Umpqua Community College part-time and had started a company of my own, that an obsession came over me to find Mary Ellen. I had to find her. I knew I had to find her. In the meantime, personal computers had become part of daily life. It was suddenly possible to look into phone books in other states, and to conduct searches for people, actually. Since Mary Ellen had been married to a man from Cuba and had what I considered a very unusual last name, I was convinced that I could find her. Dozens of people with this last name of Novoa, which was very strange to me, came to my attention over weeks and months. I phoned every single one of them. Every single one of them. And I found out that there were so many Novoas in the world that all the way to Florida, nobody knew of my best friend, Mary Ellen. It occurred to me that she perhaps had remarried, and perhaps she had a name as common as Smith, and I would never find her. How would I find a person with the last name of Smith? Thinking that Mary Ellen's husband's last name had not changed, I began to search for him. I came across several email addresses where the first and last name matched. I sent a brief message to about a half a dozen of these addresses explaining the circumstances. The very next day, I received an answer from her, from her ex-husband. He remembered me and told me he had remarried, had several more sons, and lived, of all places, in Portland, Oregon. He didn't have Mary Ellen's address or phone number, but he said he would contact his son back east, who could send it to me. He also warned me not to be shocked, as he had heard that Mary Ellen had a very serious illness. The very next day, the son's email arrived. I remember it was a Tuesday, and I remember racing to the telephone. As soon as I told her my last name from the 60s, she began telling me how she had thought about me all these years and tried to find me. We both cried. When I asked my friend about her health, she confided that she was on a list in Washington, D.C. for a heart transplant. At that moment, I knew why I had been frantically trying to find her. I believe we were soulmates, not just good friends. Mary Ellen finally had her heart transplant. I visited her twice in Virginia. Lost my place. After about another year, she was allowed to fly to Portland to visit us. Her ex-husband brought her down to Eugene, where I met them. She had become very poor since she had not been able to work for years. He paid for her flight, and I paid for all other expenses. It was in 2003 that she passed away, but she had lived another 5 years after the transplant. I carry her photograph in my wallet. Oh, here it is.
Our next speaker is Glennis Peterson. Next time we should have this down there, you know? Or a ramp or something. You don't need anything.
By the way, thank you, Bill Lesser, for these handles. I appreciate it every time I get up here. Thanks. So, one of the subjects on which we wrote was about our first cars. So mine is called My Bumper Car. In the fall of 1971, I began my studies at Umpqua Community College. There was no bus system to provide transportation, so after a year of begging for a car, my parents finally gave in. I remember my excitement. I was to have my very own car at last. I smelled freedom. No more asking if I could use the family car, which was a 1967 Pontiac Catalina station wagon with a trailer package. It was a boat by anyone's standards. Surely they would get me something economical. Perhaps I'd get a Volkswagen Beetle. Or maybe even a Carmen Ghia, which at the time was my dream car. That was not to be. From old family friends, my parents bought me a 1959 Rambler American. In the slang of the day, it was funky and pink. Common color for Rambler. It had a 3-in-the-tree standard transmission. It looked like a carnival bumper car with its spare tire mounted on the outside of the trunk. Still, I was grateful because it did at least run. And the radio worked, and I was free at last. It didn't run long, though. When my parents bought it, the car already needed a ring job. It belched smoke from the tailpipe, which in the early days of environmental awareness was considered, well, tacky. I had to keep at least 2 quarts of oil on the floor behind the driver's seat. Eventually, I started buying oil by the gallon, so I wouldn't have to buy it so often. On my car's last day, I poured 2 quarts of oil into the crankcase and drove to school. Later, on my way home, the engine started knocking loudly. Even more smoke than usual poured out from the tailpipe. Fortunately, I was just approaching the Garden Valley exit. When I rolled to the stop sign, the engine died. My attempts to restart it failed, so I pushed it down to the first gas station, which is now, by the way, the Fred Meyer gas station. I told the attendant that it died and I couldn't restart it. He peered under the hood and said, "Lady, this car isn't moving another 10 feet. You threw a rod." The next car wasn't much better. My father wanted to buy me an old pickup. It was in great condition and would be considered a vintage vehicle worthy of graffiti night. However, I did not want an old pickup for my ride. Instead, I insisted upon a 1964 Ford Galaxie XL. It was oxidized blue with a beautiful blue interior, bucket seats, and an automatic transmission, and the console, not the tree. In the parlance of the day, it was a beater. It soon developed blow-by, which again meant I had to carry gallons of oil in the back. At one point, I had something wrong with the battery, so instead of buying a new one, I rolled the car down our steep hill to start it. Yeah, it was an automatic, but I could get up enough speed going down that hill that the engine would catch just before the hairpin turn, which was good because it had power steering. I wasn't very good to that car anyway. I ignored a loud clunk in the rear end, which turned out to be a bad wheel bearing. One day I drove it up the hill with smoke pouring out of the rear wheel well. When I got to the house, flames shot out of the wheel and the tire popped. I was the towee many times. I got pretty good at keeping the chain taut so that it wouldn't jerk the bumper, as my father once again towed me home. This includes the day the steering went out altogether. I was halfway through a turn off of Harvard when the steering wheel just spun ineffectually round and round without moving the tires. My dad had to rig the tow chain so that the car would track behind him because I couldn't steer. These were the first 2 cars out of a long line of clunks that I've owned. Only once did I ever buy a brand new car, a 1999 Ford ZX2. It was sporty, peppy little number with a high-performance engine. I miss it dearly.
And our last speaker is John Asham.
Come on, if Sean can do it, I can do it. I haven't done a really good job of archiving my writings. A lot of them I just didn't. So this is something new, but it's been something on my mind for some time. And, well, what do we do when something irritates us? We seek to change either ourselves or we attempt to reform that which is objectionable. Such is what happened in 1880 in Ireland. The word boycott entered the English language during the Irish Land War, it's in quotes, and derives from the actions of Captain Charles Boycott, the land agent of an absentee landlord, an overseer, or a straw boss, as it were. A boycott is an act of nonviolent voluntary abstention from a product, person, or organization as a form of protest. It usually occurs for moral or social reasons, and its purpose is to inflict some economic loss on the target to alter an objectionable behavior. We need to keep in mind that every time we spend $1, we are casting a vote. What happened in Ireland a gross of years ago was an economic pinch caused by poor harvests. The landowner offered a reduction in rents, but the renters, the Irish who were working the land, felt the reduction was insufficient. When the renters, those who we refer to here in the United States as sharecroppers, objected, Captain Boycott was compelled to eject them from the land. This was so the landowner could replace them with folks who were more compliant. The Irish leader, Charles S. Parnell, proposed that rather than turn to violence, that when dealing with tenants who take the farms where another tenant was rejected, that everyone in the locality should shun them. This tactic was first applied to boycott when the alarm was raised. Boycott soon found himself isolated. No work was getting done in the fields or inside his own house. Local businessmen stopped trading with him, and his mail was no longer delivered. He couldn't find anyone to harvest the crops he was responsible for. The word boycott entered the language and was talked about in newspapers in the USA, England, Europe, and elsewhere. It got the attention of wealthy people everywhere. This form of protest is still viable, and it does represent the forms of protest I make in my own life to try and right wrongs. Only once have I stepped into a Walmart store. They survive, flourish even, with their efforts to gut the downtowns of every city in the United States. I won't buy anything from Amazon either, as I don't like what it's doing to our economy. I could buy the new books I read from Amazon and to do so more economically than what I pay my friend Josh Jones at While Away Books to do the same thing. But Josh's business is more important than anything Amazon does. When the United Farm Workers were having serious trouble with the grape and lettuce farmers, primarily in California, I stopped drinking Gallo wine. Cesar Chavez was on the side of right, trying to bring justice to farm workers. And I use this method of making myself scarce whenever I find injustice anywhere when it concerns an economic decision. As Unitarians, we hold one of our principles to fight for justice everywhere. When something wrong is happening, we usually shoulder the responsibility of not participating in that which is unjust. Withdrawing our economic support for a business or organization that is doing wrong is a better thing to do than open violence, a lawsuit, or any action that involves violence. Boycotts are legal. Inciting riots is not. And this is twice as many words than we're supposed to be using for these presentations.
I'm gonna stand on my tiptoes. I think you get a good idea of what our group has been like. We talk about everything, and we share emotions, political views. It's been really a wonderful experience. And I think we have time for sermon response if anyone has a comment. Or not. Okay.
Thank you. I just really want to say thank you, you writers, for sharing these. They were thought-provoking and heartwarming and touching and humorous, and really allowed me personally to explore many emotions and just added to the joy of being here. Thank you very, very much.
I just want to ditto that and also say I have enjoyed every single time that you all have chosen to share with us, and hope it will continue more often in the future.
I'll take it, Lily.
I just want to offer, again, the gratitudes for people sharing, and a quote that relates to John's concern about using more words than he intended. It's attributed to Jonathan Swift, and I think about it when I'm preparing for many a Sunday. I would have written something shorter if I'd had more time.
Oh, that's great. Anyone else?
I too have really enjoyed all of your performances as you've shared your stories with us. The one that stuck in my mind the most was one of Glennis's. She tends to be on the humorous side with many of her stories. And the one that she wrote, "Home is where her suitcase was," I thought to be the funniest one I've ever heard, and I've never forgotten it. Thank you, Glennis.
Along the same lines, thank you, you guys. I had the opportunity, I kind of answered a nudge from Connie, like, why don't you join our group? And I just hit a couple of the Zooms and wrote a couple times and shared it. But it was so cool. And Connie, I hope you do continue, because you can do it from Zoom, from Eugene. And we would love to continue the tradition. And if anybody else is thinking about joining, I mean, I'm not a writer, and it's kind of intimidating to hear something called a writers group, because I really thought it was a sharing group, because the topics that we came up with and just tossing ideas out, it was very, there's no critiquing, it's just sharing things. There's nobody correcting spelling or saying, you should have done this, and your arc that didn't do that, and your character development is, it's not that kind of writers group. And I'm now inspired to rejoin when I can get on Zoom, so hopefully you guys will still have me. And thank you all.
Lori, too. I think we have a recruit. Maybe some from Eugene, who knows? Well, we do have a hymn now. So if you're able and willing, let's stand and sing Gather the Spirit, number 347 in your hymnal.
Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this life appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store. Nurtured in love, conscious refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring, summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again.
Whoever chose that version of music, that was great. Now's the time that we are going to extinguish our chalice with these words from John O'Donohue again. May I have the courage today to live the life that I would love, to postpone my dream no longer, but to do at last what I came here for, and waste my heart on fear no more. Blessed be. So now we're going to make our circle and sing our song, Go Lift It Up.